We now move to item number 29, recognising unpaid carers. I will now call on Councillor Goldsmith to introduce the notice of motion. Councillor Goldsmith, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be reading out a lot of statistics in this speech, so I do just want to begin by acknowledging that there is a human cost behind all the numbers that I think we're going to be discussing today. In Brighton and Hove, we have nearly 21,000 unpaid carers. They are neighbours, friends, and family members who provide vital care for the people that they hold dear. They're an invisible and under-recognised workforce, without which our health and social care system would simply crumble, and yet they face systemic neglect and financial hardship. Unpaid carers are estimated to save the government £162 billion annually. To put that in perspective, that's more than England's entire NHS budget. But how do we reward these people for their vital service to our society? Recent research shows that 1.2 million unpaid carers across the UK live in poverty, and the poverty rate amongst unpaid carers is 50% higher than those who don't provide unpaid care. When you consider that carers allowance is £83.30 a week, which is just £2.38 an hour if people are only working the minimum number of hours, which many don't, can the levels of poverty really come as a surprise? The scandal of how we approach unpaid care also highlights and exacerbates other inequalities in our society, with unpaid carers who are women or from ethnic minority groups being more likely to be in poverty than others. Women also make up the majority of unpaid carers and are twice as likely as men to give up their jobs to take on caring responsibilities. The system as it stands is not just inadequate, it's actively cruel. While I recognise the additional earnings limit for carers allowance has been increased to a still fairly low £196 per week, the weekly rate of carers allowance has gone up by less than the price of a first-class stamp. To make things worse, under the current system, carers can lose their entire year's carers allowance for exceeding the earnings threshold by as little as £52, which is £1 a week. When 62% of people receiving carers allowance are already living in poverty, this cliff edge traps them there, preventing them from taking on additional work that might help them survive and plunging many into debt. We're talking about people who have dedicated their lives to caring for others only to find themselves unable to afford basic necessities. Perhaps most shamefully, we have the scandal of overpayments. Between 2019 and 2024, the total amount of outstanding overpayment debt for carers allowance rose by £100 million, leaving 134,000 unpaid carers with a total repayment bill of £251 million, adding further strain to these already struggling households. And this is after £325 million has already been clawed back. When you consider that earning £1 too much per week results in the loss of the entire allowance, and we know that the system is complex to navigate, how on earth can we consider demands for these so-called overpayments to be justified? It's not about fraudsters exploiting benefits. These are people who have made innocent mistakes in a needlessly complex and unfair system. They've been failed by the departments who are supposed to be helping them, and yet they're the ones being punished and sometimes even criminalised for it. A recent YouGov poll found that 62% of current and former unpaid carers said they had no choice in taking on their caring role. They stepped up when their families and their communities needed them, and they deserve our support, not prosecution. While there have been some welcome changes in the approach, the current actions of the government do not go far enough, and the cliff edge itself needs to be completely abolished. This motion calls for urgent action. We're asking the governments to reform how carers allowance interacts with universal credit, to remove the earnings cliff edge, to stop overpayment prosecutions, and to explore how family carers might be properly compensated for their work. We also want to better understand the needs of carers in our city and what we as a council can be doing to better support them. It was just over a month ago that this council marked Carers Week, celebrating unpaid carers in our city and recognising the important work they do. Today, we need to do more than celebrating and recognising. We need to take a stand on behalf of unpaid carers and call on the government to make the drastic changes that are desperately needed, to reward rather than punish, to understand rather than prosecute, and to improve the lives of people who have made huge sacrifices to take care of their loved ones to the benefit of our whole country. I hope the council will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsmith. I call on Councillor Earthy to second the notice of motion.
Am I allowed to reserve the right to speak later or even last?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
absolutely
I will.
fine.
Thank you.
We're now going to move to the general debate. Oh, no, sorry. I know there is a Labour Group amendment which will now be moved by Councillor Parrott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to respond and to move the amended motion on the carers allowance. This is a subject that is important on so many levels, and it is one of the reasons I asked for and was given a lead policy role on disability. Being a carer and making a real difference to someone else's life is challenging. It can be draining, exhausting, and frustrating. Being disabled or unwell changes the lives of everyone involved. Carers have my utmost respect and thanks for the work they do. Like all of us, carers don't come in a one-size-fits-all box, and many choose to and want to look after a spouse, child, or family member. My mother-in-law looked after my severely disabled brother-in-law until she was 83. She was devastated when Andrew went into full-time care, whilst knowing it was the right thing for him. I am aware for many that the cost of caring for people needs to be adequately supported. This government is addressing many of the issues that carers face and has not only raised the allowance in line with inflation, but has raised the earnings threshold significantly from £151 per week to £196. This is the largest increase since the benefit was introduced in 1976 by a Labour government. On top of this, there is already a formal review underway to address the issues of the cliff edge that many find themselves in. First raised by Carers UK in 2010, and with the Work and Pensions Committee formally calling for a review in 2018, finally we actually have a government who are willing to tackle this issue. Better workers' rights will also enable more carers to work, and with the appointment of a Minister for Care, will provide the much-needed focus in Parliament. We now need this momentum to be matched with meaningful reform. We understand that. Here in Brighton and Hove, we now have a dedicated lead role for disability, and the work has begun to meet with all of the amazing partners in the third sector to listen and understand their needs better. The key part of this work is about listening and hearing, not telling or doing unto. As a person who has a lived experience of disability and caring and working as a psychotherapist with both carers and their disabled relatives, I know that there can be nothing done about us without us. We are requesting that a report is brought to Cabinet refreshing the local carer strategy, which has proved successful and useful since its launch in 2018. This will ensure our work remains up to date and is responsive to carers' evolving needs. Thank you for raising the question and for giving me the opportunity to bring to Council the work that I have only just started to get going. I look forward to further opportunities to keep everyone updated. This Council is working tirelessly to ensure I will be there to remind us all that inevitably we have more to do. I am proud of the work that's been done, acknowledge that there is more and relish the challenge. Please come and talk to me with your ideas, your thoughts and your contributions. We're not only listening, we are doing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parrott. I now move to Councillor Burden to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm really pleased to second this amendment. During my time as lead member for adult services, ensuring the recognition and support of unpaid carers was a relentless focus of this administration, and I'm pleased to see that both my predecessors and Councillor Parrott are continuing this work. Our new contract for carers was agreed last year for the Carers Home, and through their single point of contact for carers, successful awareness raising events to highlight to services the challenges carers can face, and a range of dedicated support groups for everyone from young carers to anyone facing mental health challenges, the Carers Hub continue to deliver a vital service that not only recognises carers but supports them through a wide range of challenges that only people with lived experience of being an unpaid carer could comprehend. And speaking as someone with that lived experience, both whilst caring for my father with dementia or my wife through cancer treatment, those challenges are vast. This council regularly engages with carers through a variety of forums also, ensuring their voices are heard and that they can shape services besides being considered in our equality impact assessments. While not specifically recognised as a protected characteristic, our aim to be an inclusive city where everyone can thrive will not be realised without not just recognising unpaid carers, but supporting those almost 21,000 identified unpaid carers in our city through the vital work they do, and ensuring they still have the flexibility to lead independent and fulfilling lives, get breaks when they need to, and have the information they need at their fingertips to get the support they deserve. Our amendments to this motion will only strengthen the laudable work local Labour have ensured is already underway.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burden. I'll now move to the general debate. Councillor Hogan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We in the Conservative group recognise the amazing contribution made by unpaid carers in the city. We also recognise that people may need to step into the role of a carer at any point in their lives, sometimes unexpectedly, and often causing them to take a significant financial hit. It seems also that the need for further and more unpaid care will only increase in the future as people live longer, chronic diseases increase, and people make choices to have their care in their home environment. In terms of the Green and Independent notice of motion, while we would love to remunerate unpaid carers fairly, the fundamental question is, where will the money come for all of this? We recognise the system needs overhauling completely and support this. But as I said, we recognise the contribution, would like to see them remunerated. However, neither this notice of motion or the amendments could be financially fulfilled. We therefore cannot support the notice of motion or the amendments as they stand.
Thank you, Councillor Hogan. Councillor Pickett.
Thanks, Sir. I don't believe there's anyone in this chamber who doesn't know someone who at some time has had to take up the role of carer for either their family or friends, particularly when people get older. I personally spent a long time caring with my mother for my grandmother, whose dementia caused her to spiral down into a world of anxiety and fear. That time with my grandmother lasted years and wasn't entirely pleasant. It became very demanding, and I saw how it severely and negatively impacted the health of my mother, who took most responsibility. My increasingly elderly mother is now caring for my father. They too have now reached that critical age. Providing unpaid care such as this often means that family members have no choice but to give up work or reduce their hours. Often they are working during the day and caring at night, putting aside their own physical and mental needs. I remember at one time my mother and I working as shifts with my grandmother so that she was rarely alone. She couldn't be left as she would do things such as call emergency services or wander off into town and get lost. She was also just very frightened and needed people she needed to be with her 24/7. Furthermore, my mother was also kept awake most of the night by my grandmother. I don't know how she coped. I suppose she just had to, because we were told that social services couldn't provide the help that we thought would be in the best interests of my grandmother. Social care funding has not kept pace with the increasing number of people needing care, and the care system is now more than ever reliant on unpaid carers to prop it up. The understanding that friends or family will provide this care is unsaid, but the time given is often to the detriment of those who provide it. Current statistics show that 44% of adults providing unpaid care for over 35 hours a week are in poverty, with nearly 8% of people receiving carers allowance relying on food banks. A number of carers have also been unfairly prosecuted for carers allowance overpayments, despite the known complexity of calculating these allowances. Additionally, this allowance is entirely deducted from universal credit payments. Giving up work to become a carer is an admirable thing to do, and carers should not be punished for doing this, especially while saving the government billions in doing so. Without unpaid carers, our health and social care system would collapse. This joint Green Independent NOM requests that the Council addresses these issues in a letter to the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. We want unpaid carers to be compensated for the vital work they do. However, in the meantime, we also want a review of how how money from carers allowance is treated in relation to universal credit, as well as an assessment of rules around part-time earnings to allow unpaid carers to do more work and remove the cliff edge of benefit loss. Locally, we request a report to be brought to Cabinet to consider what the Council can do better to support carers here in Brighton and Hove. Please support this joint party nom. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pickett. Councillor Earthy, you've reserved your right to speak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the Green Group for the opportunity to second this motion. It should not be any surprise to you that I fully support the original nom given when I said at June's special council meeting. I speak from experience because I was an unpaid carer for my parents and for my late wife. I shall not repeat the numbers stated in the nom, they are stark enough. Instead, I shall start by being very un-British. Rather than retain the stiff upper lip and suffer these attacks in silence, I'll simply say this. On behalf of unpaid carers everywhere, I'm heartily sick of the endless moral blackmail that we suffer at the hands of politicians. You all know that the vast majority of unpaid carers are supporting relatives and partners, generally those whom we love, who are honour bound to support. Many of us may be children dragged away from home or education, effectively mortgaging our future to pay for the present. No matter how hard our lives get at your hands, you know that we will always continue in our role of carers. It's basic human nature, and thank God, it transcends politics. And yet you shamelessly and ruthlessly exploit this because you know that whatever you do to us, we should just carry on and suffer in silence. So I am saying no more. Have your Westminster bosses any idea the reality of being a carer? They are very welcome to come down off their high horses to the real world to find out. The financial support arrangements are a disgrace. On our side, for the care that we provide, no charge. For the transport that we provide, no charge. For the impact on our own mental health, no charge. And on your side, ooh, you've overclaimed by 1 penny. Here's our charge, a criminal charge for dishonesty. Shameful. Shame on this desperately broken system that criminalises simple mistakes of overpayment due to its own incompetence. It cannot possibly be hard to fix the complex interactions of state payments, carers allowance, PIP, and universal credit and paid employment. Nor can it be hard to simplify the application process and improve safeguards against over and under claiming. So surely an amnesty is the only decent thing to do. Of course, we are aware that there's not a great deal that the Council Labour administration can practically do about the state payment system. But you can demand of your Westminster masters to get this fixed. Otherwise, the tagline at the next election will be, Labour doesn't care for carers. However, I am convinced there's a lot that can be done and must be done locally, and I did look forward to working with all political groups on Resolution 2. However, the Labour Group's amendment's deletion of Resolution 2 is completely unacceptable. All the original required was that we come up with a list of costed options. Carers don't want solidarity. We take that as read. We just want tangible help and support. Collectively, we should have no difficulty in coming up with a number of costed options to support our city's unpaid carers. These need not be costly, some may even be free. So to conclude, I appeal to the Labour Group to put party politics to one side and support the original nom, especially Resolution 2 with its focus on local needs. Call upon, no demand, that the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care stops his moral blackmail once and for all and finally does the right thing for this indefensible section of society. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Earthy. Councillor Goldsmith, do you wish to respond to the debate and indicate if the amendment has been accepted? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I don't think I can add a huge amount to what Councillor Earthy said. That was an incredibly powerful speech, and thank you so much. But I would very much repeat his calls for this Labour administration to make a plea with their governments to call for an amnesty on these payments. There are so many unpaid carers who are under so much stress already, and now they're facing criminal prosecutions. We keep hearing that councils in the Senate chamber, because there's now a Labour government, they've got their ear. So use that influence that you keep telling us that you have and try and make some meaningful change. Probably not surprising that we don't accept the Labour amendment. It renders the main points of our motion completely meaningless, and we think that unpaid carers in the city deserve better. Despite acknowledging all of the main issues in the system, the nullification of universal credit, the damage and cliff edge and additional earnings, the needless complexity when calculating allowances, and the scandal of prosecutions leaving unpaid carers with criminal records, the amendment then goes on to do nothing about it. In the place of actual actions, is instead praise for the Labour government, ignoring the fact that upcoming changes to PIP eligibility for new claimants, even after the U-turns, will result in hundreds, if not thousands, of potential new carers becoming ineligible for carers allowance. Completely rewriting motions in this way just makes a joke of our whole system. If Labour councillors don't agree with what we've written, they should just vote against it, not turn it into cheap propaganda for their increasingly unpopular government. Any councillor in this chamber who wants to show their support for unpaid carers should vote against this wrecking motion and support the unamended version, calling for real, meaningful change.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsmith. I will now put the Labour Group amendment to the vote. Can I ask for a show of hands? All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? I can confirm that the amendment has been carried. I will now put the motion as amended to the vote. Can I ask for a show of hands? All those in favour, please. All those against? Any abstentions? I can confirm that the motion as amended has been carried. Thank you.